It might take years for you to turn into the racehorse you were meant to be. We're going to talk about it on today's podcast.
I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life.
What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm excited that you joined me today because I've got a story to tell you. So once upon a time, a long time ago, I used to ride horses a lot. In fact, I grew up around horses. My father had a number of them and a small little stable with a few horses that I grew up around, and I was privileged to be able to go riding periodically whenever I visited my dad. And and at times we would go out on super long rides and take the horses and go out with the friends and go on these long adventures, just riding through the mountains or out across the desert. But one of my favorite things to do really was to be able to go out into the desert and just go riding. And when I got old enough that I could saddle my horse and do all of that, I was allowed to go take the horse and just go for a ride. So I would get up super early. Well, for me, it was super early. I'd get up at like 6:30, 6 or 6:30, saddle up the horse. And this was one of my favorite horses. And this horse, its name was Champagne. It was a beautiful Palomino, beautiful blonde mane, and just perfect coloring. And, while I would consider this sort of my horse, because I rode it the most. I helped break the horse, right? So I was the one small enough to get on the horse when it was time, and it liked me. It didn't really buck all that much when we were teaching it to ride, and so really in the early, in its early years, we had it from when it was younger, and really I was the only one that could ride it. And there was a reason for it. It was small. It was just not a very large horse. And so I had basically exclusive rights to riding this horse. My dad was too big to ride it. And so whenever we went out, I would always get this horse first. And so when I'd go out riding on my own, like I said, I'd get up at maybe 6:30, maybe 7. And I'd saddle up, put, a whole bunch of food. I'd make some food and, throw some sandwiches and some drinks in the saddlebags. I'd take some beef jerky and some water. Sometimes I'd even take some tarp or something to lay out or whatever. And of course, I took my BB gun, right? Something, so go shoot at the trees, shoot at the squirrels or whatever, right? And I'd go out on these rides, and I'd go out for the entire day, so my dad was cool about it. He was like, yeah, just be safe. And so we'd go out, and I'd just ride and ride and ride out into the desert, and just, as long as you knew your way, you'd find your way back. And so I'd ride for half a day, see how far I could go, and then ride the other half a day back and get back at night for dinner. And it was awesome. It was one of my favorite things to do. Me and this horse, though, we kind of, grew through the ages. And my dad would always complain that this horse was just not growing. And it was a smaller horse. but I loved riding it. It was so freaking fast. It was so fast. And, I think during the time that we had it, it was maybe over a course of maybe 3 to 5 years, maybe. And horses, they take some time to grow. As babies, you don't want to ride them for a while. So they're colts, and they're growing large enough. You want them to be able to develop before you start putting weight on their back and messing up their spine, right? So, but I was small. I didn't weigh hardly anything, and so I loved this horse, and I knew we kind of had a good connection, me and Champagne. And me and this horse, we would get out and we would go so fast. I mean, this was racehorse quality fast, right? I was small and it didn't care and it loved to go. And so anytime we'd go out into the desert like this, you could find these huge stretches of just flat ground for the most part. Sometimes there were little ravines that snuck up on us, but we would go out and we'd see this big huge thing, and Champagne knew, right? He knew that I liked to run, and so I'd let him loose and we would just fly. We would just fly, go as fast as we possibly could. And I would get back and have these conversations with my dad and say, Champagne is fast. I think he's like a racehorse fast. And he's like, no, that's not true, right? Because he never really was able to get on that horse and test it out. But I knew that this horse could go so fast. I mean, like, to the extent that I was really just a passenger. I wasn't doing anything other than just letting him go. And, it was a year went by, another year went by, and I was the only one riding him. My dad couldn't ride him. He wasn't growing, he wasn't getting bigger. And so you kind of get to this place where it was like, oh, I don't know. And so I think at a certain point, I only visited periodically. So I was the only one riding Champagne. And my dad decided that it was time to move on and get another horse and pass that horse on to somebody else that maybe could take advantage of it as a whole. So I remember my dad calling me and saying, "Hey, you know what? I sold Champagne. We sold it to another farmer down the road, and they're going to get great use out of this horse." And I was pretty sad because this was my horse, right? This was my speedster, right? And anyway, I found it was probably about a year or so later, and we were riding down uh, the street. I know that sounds funny, right? But his place was out where there were just dirt roads in the by the houses, so there really weren't paved roads in the neighborhood. It was all dirt roads. It was all ranchers and farmers. And so I was riding down the road on another horse, and I looked over, and there was Champagne at these other stables, and I was excited. Their family was out with them, and they were riding, and I was like, man, that looks a lot. So I stopped to talk to this family, and I asked them if that was Champagne. They're like, oh yeah. I said that was my horse, and I said, but it's huge, huge. I mean, it had probably grown about 4 or 5 hands. I mean, just crazy. With horses, they measure. It's not really, but they call it hands. They say how high or how tall is the horse. It was, 15 hands or 14 hands tall, and this horse was huge. It had filled out. And I knew the horse well, but after about a year, it was amazing. I said, what the heck did you guys do? That horse wasn't growing. They said, nothing really. We just did what we do. We talked a little bit and I asked them what they were feeding them and, just trying to figure it out. Well, it just turns out that it took a little while for this racehorse to turn into the racehorse that it was. Now, I don't know what they were going to use him for. I wish I could say that the story ended with him becoming, an actual racehorse. I'm not sure what they used him for, but they indeed confirmed that this was their fastest horse, and he was great. Champagne was an amazing horse, but you see, it took some time. It took some years to grow into the racehorse that he was. I knew it, and I was privileged to be able to see a little bit ahead of time before he came into his own, that he was going to be this racehorse, that he was going to be this speedster, and he was going to grow to this amazing stature. But I knew it. I knew it. I was writing it. We were sort of partners in the game, right? And we spent a lot of time together out in the desert. And I knew, but along the way, my dad, gosh, he was like, I don't know that this horse is going to turn into that horse. It's been long enough, and we've had it long enough, and I just don't think it's going to get any bigger. And so he decided to sell it and move on to another horse that he needed functionally for his place. So what's the moral of the story? Well, sometimes it just takes a few years to turn into the racehorse that you are. But here's the thing. Sometimes it's easy to lose sight of who it is that you are, or what you have inside of you. And that's why we have coaches. This year alone, I've picked up 4 more coaches than I've had in the past. 5 coaches of my own, right? Why? Because I have an idea. I know what I can become. I know how great I can be. And I know that there's no real limit. It's just a matter of time. So you go, well, so you're really shooting for the end? No, not really. Actually, it's about understanding that each day we can get better and better and better. And with our coaches, with somebody that can see what's inside of us, they can continue to guide us. They can continue to help us along the way and along the journey to be able to see with a different perspective than we've ever had before. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to become the racehorse that you have inside, or that your coach knows that you have inside. And that's interesting, right? Because sometimes that coach might only be the only one that can see the greatness within you. Maybe your light gets a little dim. Maybe the flame starts to go out, and that's a perfect time to get a coach. But the other perfect time to get a coach is when you know what you have inside is great, and you just need some help getting it to actually show up, because sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. So I want to encourage you today to find a coach. Maybe it's me. Cool. Look me up. Find me. See if you can get connected. I'd love to help. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's for something else. Maybe it's for a particular thing. Maybe you need coaching in your finances. Maybe you need coaching in the specific skill set that you are trying to attain. But maybe you need some coaching in your mindset and about becoming the racehorse that you are. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you know somebody that needs to hear this, please pass it on and make sure they get it, because we're out to change as many people's lives as we can and really make a big impact on the world. So share this with your friends. Hashtag Majic for Life if you're on Instagram or wherever you're at. And please like and subscribe. Leave us a rating or a comment. Apple, if you're on Apple, for sure, leave us a rating. We love it when you leave us ratings, and Apple does too, and they help us move our way up the ranks when you do. So I appreciate you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Hey lifers, we expect upgrades to the base operating functions of the things like our phones, cars, and even refrigerators. Why then has it not been made a priority that we upgrade the operating systems of our emotional states? We dance around the subject of emotional mastery from a young age. We have so much more knowledge in today's world, yet we're still teaching outdated methods of emotional education, if any are being taught at all. It's time for a change. It's time for an upgrade to our emotional education. Let me help you learn how to do that. Pick up your free copy of Every Minute at everyminutebook.com.